Hello my friends and welcome, let's go straight to the military map update. And in Takhmachka direction, Zaporizhia Oblast, Russia tried to penetrate Ukrainian defense using the number of the vehicles, big number. They sent a convoy of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, those are 2 vehicles. I haven't seen those kind of attacks for a very long time, usually maximum 3 of the vehicles. If there are vehicles after all, because most of the attacks are happening just with the Russian infantry. But this was an exemption. This is the Russian tank which was kaboomed on the way, but later on continued the movement because it is the Hunger tank. It has robust anti-drone protection. And if we zoom into this cockpit, yeah, sorry, there's one vehicle after all, just the big one, T-62 tank with this anti or demine plug. The last convoy vehicle was hit. They continue further. The second, or maybe, yeah, the first tank was hit. Later on, BMPs tried to avoid it on the way. There is one tank. Again, it continued the movement. They went aside from the road, but there were some of the mines here. You see, yeah, mines really hit those vehicles. They were disabled, and Russian infantry, you'll not see here probably, but they left the BMP, which was hit, and they tried to leave the area. And those are the remains of one of the vehicles here. One is on fire, the other one was just stopped. The part of the Russian infantry went to the local tree line. As you see, this area is kind of deserted place. Not many trees in general, because it's the southern part of Ukraine where the temperature is higher than in the northern or central Ukraine. It seems like I calculated it right. Russia lost 2 of the tanks. Actually, those were T-72 tanks. Usually, Russia doesn't convert those into the Hunger tanks fully, but it was an exemption. BMP-1, 2 units. BMP-3, 2 units as well. BMP-3 is way more modern compared to BMP-1, but still Russia produces that and uses on the front lines for a stupid midwave attack which just failed for Russians. And here's the same attack from the drone perspective. You may see the Russian tank. After all, we understand it's T-72. You may see the huge anti-mine or demine plug, and still they can move their turret just a little. I think roughly maybe 60 degrees, not more than that. So now they try to keep maneuverability. Nevertheless, Ukrainian drones are very precise, hitting this tank in the forward lower part. And just the day before yesterday, Zelensky himself said that Russia collects the forces, accumulates them, let's say in Zaporizhia direction for the major strike. Well, the first strike happened, probably they tried to find the weak spot and they were almost sure about it if they sent that amount of the forces. But it didn't work well for Russians. They want to advance towards Malaya Takhmachka, or Mala Takhmachka in Ukrainian, to move to Orikhiv, the biggest settlement in this southern place. The problem for Russians that Ukraine built significant defense lines. You may see this blue line over here, comparable to Russian defense lines, which Ukraine wasn't able to penetrate back in 2023. So judging even on this attack, the attempt of Russia to go across very flat terrain, just fields, almost no trees, no leaves at least on those trees, where I don't think that they will be successful in this attack. In general, Russia failed their offensive during the summer and spring campaign. We'll see what's gonna happen this autumn, but I don't think that Russia has enough resources for major achievements this year. And if we are here in the south, let's check out what is happening in Kamensk, where Russia penetrated the first line of Ukrainian defense, let's say in this village and in Plavny. Well, the situation there is quite stable. Russia is very close to Stepnohirsk. They advanced with their sabotage groups. Roughly 4 days ago, they went here with their sabotage groups. Some of them were imprisoned. Yeah, they imprisoned also Ukrainian soldiers, few of them in Plavny. But further than that, there is nothing for the last few days. It seems like after all, Russia has problems because this breach is being kaputted by Ukrainian army probably, and supplies were cut for Russia. They have to use other routes, maybe via this smaller road to cross this small river. Speaking about the southern part, there is also successful Ukrainian aviation strike on a Russian-occupied facility, let's say, which they converted into their barracks. Well, before it was the agriculture, construction or something like that, there was the strike and the part of the structure just collapsed. And we have videos filmed from different angles from a couple of the drones, surveillance drones. This year, Ukrainian aviation really operates behind the front lines, not far behind, but behind still. In Kursk region, Belgorod, here in Kherson region, also in Zaporizhia direction, but Ukraine still tries to avoid using aviation in Donbass because of the significant number of the Russian air defense systems. And about the air defense systems, Russia lost the S-300 air defense system radar in Crimea. I guess I showed you it in my last video, primary unit. They hit the Russian air defense really hard. But if we go to Komar direction, well, here are good news and bad news. Let's start from the good news. Ukraine liberated Dachne village. Here we have the video, you can see the smoke is still out there, and here are Ukrainian soldiers waving flag in the village. So it was liberated, or the remains of the village which was destroyed by Russians basically. Yeah, you may see that all of the buildings were hit in one or another way, and this is important village because there is the road going through it. This road, yeah, which connects Novoukrainka and all of those villages with Novopavlivka on the northern side. Well, as for the bad news, you may see that Ukraine continued to lose equipment. For example, this was the Lancet drone hit on Ukrainian M777 artillery system. From what I know, our guys left the position, so there were no losses among Ukrainian soldiers, but obviously M777 is destroyed. And judging on those details, I don't think it's the decoy or something, I think it's the real system. Alright, let's go to Pokrovsk direction. There we have the fresh loss, unfortunately, for Ukrainian army. This is the Ukrainian MRAP vehicle. You can see it over here. It was hit by the Russian FPV drone or probably by mine. It's hard to tell really. I think that after all it was the mine which destroyed the forward part of the vehicle. But Ukrainian crew left the vehicle on time to the bushes, to the local ruined buildings, and this door is open and the wheels are basically absent. This is not the hangar tank or something, no, this is MRAP vehicle which was damaged and later on finished by the next Russian drone strike. Let's go back to the military map, because here Ukraine was successful in Myrna, but Russia sent some extra reinforcements and they act in Mykolaiivka, trying to cut this Ukrainian assault vector. Well, the front lines in this area, they simply do not exist. Everything is mixed, that's why we see this big gray area, which is colored in yellow here. But nevertheless, this direction turned from the most disastrous for Ukraine to the most profitable if we speak about successful counterattacks. And I know what this means, but I cannot click on this. It says about self-KA of the Russian soldiers. One of the guys kaputted himself touching his partner with grenade. Yeah, I saw that video. It is terrible, and at the same time it shows how miserable Russian soldiers are, acting on open fields areas without any sort of the drone protection. But if we go more to east, you see that Russians took Katerinovka. Finally, we have the confirmation about it. So the only village out here which is still under Ukrainian control is Kleban Big. As I've told you in one of my recent videos, I think all of that is also the gray zone up to the lake here, and Ukraine will also remove the forces from Kleban Big village very soon. Well, the only good thing that Russia moves very slowly in Tarek's direction and also in Konstantinovka. In Katerinovka alone, they lost several of the armored vehicles for the last couple of weeks. So yeah, they move, but they do it really slowly and with severe losses. In Chasiv Yar, so far Russia is unable to clear entire Chasiv Yar. Still, some parts are under Ukrainian control. That's why Russians try to bypass this settlement from the northern side, now turning the attack towards Mykolaiivka, according to recent reports from our guys on the front lines. So now the picture is something like this with a gray area extension, I would say. Russia absolutely needs to take Mykolaiivka, Chasiv Yar and all of those villages to propel towards Konstantinovka. And you know, guys, the last winter there was the threat for Pokrovsk. I say that Russia is very close. They have all of the chances to get this settlement or town under their control. Well, 8 months have passed since my prediction, and Russia is still not out there in Pokrovsk. Maybe just with small sabotage groups, but it is really nothing to occupy the settlement, which again tells that the Russian army is damn slow in this war. And I'm really surprised that Russia wants to continue this war, because they thought maybe they have tremendous resources or what. It seems like the Russian High Military Command doesn't understand the picture on the ground, and we have the evidence actually that it is really happening like that. For example, this is the meeting room of Gerasimov, the chief army commander of the Russian army. His deputies, his generals are presented there. This is the portrait of the Russian defense minister Belousov. Putin is also here maybe 10-12 years ago. And what is interesting is this military map. You might see even from this perspective that it is kind of different compared to the information we obtain from the front lines, the deep state military map or other maps from different analytics. They color everything in red. There is no gray area. Gray area is basically the entire Russian occupied territory for them. And this is the Russian offensive, which was already cut well before, and Russia is not presented there, but in this cabinet they share those kind of the maps, which is delusional information. And here we have the zoomed in image. So basically Russia doesn't exist here any longer. It was cut and trapped in one of the local villages. This is cut. The attack attempts in Pokrovsk are no more. About Konstantinivka, just look at this. Russians already entered Konstantinivka, which is crazy. Just if you are taken long time ago, several of the encirclements of Ukrainian army. So basically absolute nonsense. And I'm taking those pictures from the Russian channels. Russian military bloggers themselves are in shock. They say, wow, our military command obtains not the real information. They color everything in red, creating those pockets for Ukrainian army, which are not real. Yes, we have the same comments from Russian military bloggers, those who do not hesitate to say the things as they are. And they share also the deep state military map or the maps of their analytics. They put one map on another. So according to the Russian Defense Ministry, they took this extra, this entire area as well. They moved here. They control this territory, which is basically not true, as well as over here. And here Ukraine, by the way, started the counterattack. So I would understand if they shared this map for propaganda purposes on Russia Today channel or something. But this big, huge map is waving out there in the Russian highest cabinets, which means that Russian command is damn delusional. Maybe Gerasimov himself obtains not real information from the place, because Russians advance with their flags somewhere and later on being kaputted. Or the Russian flag operation. The main thing is to go somewhere to the gray area, to show the flag to the Russian drone, and that's it. Put it near some of the monument. They went to the local ruined building, and the building later on it is gone. And the flag, it's here, you may see, also gone. But Gerasimov will mark on his map the new occupied village with a red color. And it's not just this case, there are tons of those incidents or accidents happened to Russians. Those are the well-known flag operations, and the Russian military bloggers, Russians themselves, they do hate those, but they still go there with their flags and they do it. In 90% of the cases, it's the one-way ticket. There is one Z-tuber on YouTube who has a couple of the flags behind, Ukrainian and Russian one, and who sometimes mock pro-Ukrainian influencers and YouTubers as me, as someone else. Yeah, miserable guy with this kind of the face on every of the thumbnail. I got his latest video in my recommendations recently, where he says that, oh, Ukrainian commanders, they do not say the real picture to the high Ukrainian military command, to Syrsky, so they don't know the real stuff. And de facto Syrsky attends the front line. Yes, I don't like Syrskyi for different stuff, but he knows the real situation, what is happening, unlike the Russian military command, and we have the real evidence of that. And those so-called neutral, unbiased YouTubers who tell shit about Ukrainian war, well, go and yourself. Am I a hater? Well, could be. But I didn't start it. Alright, in Pokrovsk direction, Russia tried to use tanks to break through Ukrainian defense as well. It is happening in Mirnograd, not far away from it. Again, Russians used the Hunger type of the T-72 tank. Here I can see it clearly. And inside the hood, they put some of the infantry here, as it is reported by Officer Plus, whom I trust. He has the most fresh updates coming from the front lines. He tells the situation as it is. Well, here in this video, I see two of the vehicles, probably one BMP and this tank. But in the Repelled direction, Russia used motorcycles and all-terrain vehicles for advancement, and all of them are being caputted and partially trapped in the local village. And now let's go to Liman direction, where the situation deteriorates actually for Ukrainian army because Russia has new attack vectors. One goes to the Rileve village, this is the new attack vector, and the other one towards Stavki from Kolodezi, where Russia advanced recently. Well, also the move in Serblansky force, but here Ukraine tries to hold them in Torske. However, according to the recent information, Russia gained this part of the territory of Zarichna village. Well, the fight for this one continued already for many months, like at least 2 of the months. So in general, Russia wants to create the pressure on Liman, and they want actually to advance further, to cross the Siversky Donets River, to go to Radiogorodok, and later on to the big settlement of Slavyansk. But Ukraine may easily cut those bridges if Russia occupies Liman after all. They occupied it, by the way, in 2022. Ukraine liberated it. Later on, Russians actually went to this river already, but Ukraine managed somehow to push them hard. And the Russian General Lapin, responsible for this direction, was just recently dismissed from his position, but he has, as they say, some health issues. What's about Novomikhailivka? Well, Ukraine liberated this village recently, but Russians moved here in the northern side, putting their flag in those kind of the buildings, small farm probably. And 1 week ago, Ukraine counterattacked in Grekivka, taking it under control, a very small village. And recently, Russians were spotted here occupying this village, or at least it is in a gray zone, as we may see on this map. And our direction of Kupiansk, on the Russian maps, they already cut this road, they've encircled Kupiansk, but no, it's not like that, it's the gray area partially. And Ukraine confirmed that Russians were not able to cross P-79 road, at least from Radkivka. Maybe with the small sabotage groups they made it here to close to Sobolevka, but later on were repelled. The situation in Kupiansk is hard, but not catastrophic for now. The northern side of the Kharkiv region, no changes. However, recently Russia intensified the strikes in Vovchansk, but without major changes. And Sumy region, Ukraine is very active with aviation strikes in Totkina as well, but also recently lost one of the armored vehicles. We have it on Telegram, probably from the Russian channels. Yeah, it was hit by the drone or hit the mine here. I think that after all it was a drone, the doors are open, so crew evacuated the vehicle, and after it was finished by another FPV drone. It is a war, so unfortunately there are losses also from Ukrainian side. But the Russian losses are just crazy. Media Zona, the project of the Russian opposition, which analyzes Russian losses based on the real evidence, actual funerals, the information online about the losses, the official information from the Russian websites. And so far, the official register recorder names count is 125, almost 126,000. But they do not calculate LPR and DPR militia forces. They do not calculate private armies like, for example, Wagner. And they do not calculate missing Russian soldiers. So if we calculate only Russian army, they estimate 220,000 soldiers, and it's total KIA, like completely gone, not wounded, no, KIA, which is not far away from the real picture. If you check out the graph, the losses of the Russian army seems to be dropping. But actually it's not like that, because Russia tries to hide the losses as hard as possible. Secret funerals, officials try not to publish the information, so it's kind of limited. That's why we see this kind of the decline despite the losses on the front lines, and we witness on the drone videos that definitely it's the same as before, if not more. So we may multiply this number by 3 to 4 times and you'll have the real losses of the Russian army, which would be equal to 1 million soldiers altogether wounded and KIA, which in general corresponds to the figure which we see from Ukrainian updates or from the international and independent reports. It's lower than Ukrainian figure, but even Russians themselves, they say that they already lost at least 1 million. And that always raises the question in my head, why? What's the reason of this war? And the only response that I may find is that Putin was just bored during the COVID time. He was encircled by the same guys as he is, FSB, stupid pricks. He decided to start this war, to be recalled by history that he is the collector of the Russian lands. Then de facto, Ukraine is not Russia. I don't see any sort of the other explanation, and why those people continue to lose their lives, their health in this war, I don't know. Well, it's understandable for Ukrainians, they defend their land, but for Russia to go somewhere for millions of rubles, that's it, but it's one-way ticket. And you know, watching those drone videos with Russian soldiers, sometimes they're really terrific, or how to call them in English, like really hard to watch, because in many of the cases they are not flatlined instantly. No, it's the long process, sometimes accompanied with fire. Guess it's just terrible, and they're going there absolutely sure that they're gonna win. They're like those immortal superheroes. This Russian soldier shows this video showing the portraits of the fallen soldiers of Russian Federation in just one of the Russian cities, Blagoveshchensk. Well, actually this alley, he says, is dedicated to the soldiers who've fallen in Afghanistan, but Russians decided to put new pictures and more stands for those who lost their lives for Russia in Ukrainian war. So this guy visited the park and he says, no, the losses are much higher. Not everyone is out there in the pictures with the names, call signs. He says that his short vacation is coming to an end. Probably he was wounded and he will go back to the front lines in September, so this month. So he says probably my picture will be there in October or maximum November. I would say he's kind of positive about his future military career. Okay, this Russian soldier with Azerbaijani somehow roots. Yeah, probably he's the Russian citizen and fights for the Russian army, which makes him basically the shame of Azerbaijani nation. He's not Azerbaijani, not the real one. So he is very cheerful on this video, telling that Russia is very strong, Russia gonna win and everything like that. And this is him, the same person, filmed by Ukrainian drone. Yeah, there were so many drones around him dropping presents. Somehow he didn't like those presents, but Ukraine gave those in any case. And yeah, probably he will not praise Russia once again.
Надеюсь, нас разъебет ракетой нас.
This Russian soldier says, I hope we'll be struck by rocket. I don't know why he said it like that. They were gathering some of the equipment. And here's the report about the same guy. I'm tired of losing my friends, my dear friend. I'm very sad that I lost you. He was very young and very happy. Yeah, and the message he sent to Ukrainian rocket probably well received. And guys, please don't forget to subscribe and check more videos on my YouTube channel. I have daily updates there, and just not long time ago, few hours, 9 hours ago, I filmed the video about kabooms in Crimea, and not only, plus some political stuff around Ukraine, news, Ukrainian military support, because this video I filmed is just dedicated to the situation on the front lines. And as usual, many thanks for my Patreon supporters, guys. Thank you so much. You really make this content possible. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.